Hey, you ever heard of a grifter? We're going to talk about that next because I believe Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire are both grifters on a completely different scale. Coming up next on the show. Welcome to the Matt Logan Show. Didn't think that was how I was going to open, did you, Craig?
Not at all.
Yeah. I've been accused of being a grifter, and I want to thank the people, you people watching, listening, for supporting us. I've never had you support us financially. Not saying that's always going to be the case, but I'm a truck driver, and my bills are getting paid. More and more people are asking for more and more content because I am a commoner, and there's a lot of commoners out there.
Mm-hmm.
And most commoners won't do what I do, and that is I won't toe a party line. I won't, I've said I have massive faults. I try to work on those faults. I'm very open about that stuff. And so I'm also open about how I look at things from as many angles as I can and have time for, with the understanding I have my own bias. I know that I have my own bias. I confirm that I have my own bias, but I am very willing to sit down and listen to people and say, in a good faith conversation, and say, this is what my bias is. This is what I think. This is why I think it. Mm-hmm. Most people that are on the left, frankly, and certainly progressive, won't do that. I've learned that the hard way, and what I mean by that is I've put tons of work into that, trying to have those conversations with those people, and all I do is get things like, I don't know if you knew this. This is a public. I'm going to do a comments section show sometime, and this is one of the public comments on one of the podcasts. They didn't like my beard.
I'm just jealous.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Of course, they don't use a real name.
Of course not.
And that apparently they, say that I have low T, is how they put it, testosterone, which
that's an interesting observation.
Because, yeah, I guess, my voice and my dark hair and a lot of hair, and I look at whatever.
Yeah, pretty mid-level on the evolutionary ladder, I would say.
Yeah, and so it's really comical is my point. That's what they do. What they do on the progressive and the left side that I've found personally is they will fire that kind of stuff at you to try to get you to shut up and try to get you on the defense and all those things. And it's just like, for me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Good. Have fun with it.
Congratulations.
Right.
You got me.
So whatever. Apparently somebody thinks they know what my bank account is too, so
good. Maybe they can put some money in
I
it
know,
for
exactly. You. That's what I was thinking too. But anyway, the fight between the Daily Wire specifically and Steven Crowder specifically, it's working exactly how both sides want it to.
Absolutely. And
that is the grift.
Define grifter.
Sure. So a grifter, essentially, it essentially, the raw definition from a dictionary would be more of like from a political stance, whereas where you stand politically is constantly changing so that you gain power and money and control. That's essentially the meaning of a grifter. What it boils down to in the real world, a grifter is more of someone that is navigating a space to make a wave, make a living, become more prominent,
garner attention.
Exactly. In most cases, at the end of it, it's a monetary gain purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think that both sides have super valid points on this. I think that both sides are extremely wrong in certain areas of it. And I think both sides are dominantly proper and correct on this.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all coming from their own personal perspective or bias.
Absolutely. They're going off of their experiences.
Yes. I think that some of the things from Steven Crowder's standpoint is a little disingenuous. I think that the core of why it became disingenuous is real. I think that he has a real conviction for, as he put it, helping new creators more specifically come up in this space than what probably the Daily Wire is. They want to, it's more of a business for them. His business model is essentially very different than the Daily Wire's, is the bottom line. Right. From what I can see. And I've listened to hours of podcast, hours and hours, right from Steven's mouth, Candace Owens, Jeremy Boring, owner of the Daily Wire, right from their mouths. So they, again, all valid points, all invalid points. They're all wrong and they're all right.
Yeah. So there's been some media people that I've followed and then kind of distanced myself from, but I've always kind of been intrigued by them. And now that they're on their own, they're free to do what they want. And my thought is, why doesn't Steven Crowder do that? If he doesn't want somebody else controlling, however strong-armed or not, do his own thing. And who I think of, and I remember watching as a kid, is John Stossel, who used to be on Fox and is independent, and Megyn Kelly, who was on Fox and then went to MSNBC, and she's completely independent. And they are free to say whatever they want, and it's risk and reward. They have put up their own money to do their own production groups, but they are free to say what they want. Why doesn't Steven Crowder do that? If he's got 7 million followers and all this potential earnings, invest in yourself, man. I mean, that's what Ben Shapiro did.
And I think that's exactly what he's working towards with this.
He's just getting the publicity off of.
He's getting the publicity off of that. Yeah. I mean, I think so. Here's the thing for me that I will die on the hill of. I am a believer in Jesus and that he came here and did what he did for sinners, me. I also believe what it says there in 1 John specifically, and a couple other places, but how we will be known by our actions. And the Daily Wire has some bad actions, but yet claim to be Christian. And certainly Ben Shapiro, a Jew, he's very, very open about that. And then Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh are very, Michael Knowles is a Catholic, and I believe Matt Walsh too. Candace Owens, same thing, calls herself a Christian. So does Steven Crowder. Well, you listen to what they're doing. They're dropping some pretty foul language. They're bashing on people because they don't like what they did or their way or whatever. And that's why I think that it's working brilliantly for both companies. I think that both companies are getting the publicity out of this, whether their base is becoming stronger, and they're sifting through the ones that aren't their base through this whole process. And I think that because of that kind of thing, I think they're using the whole quote unquote Christian thing as a base of their dealings or business or whatever. And I just don't think it's right. I don't think it's genuine. They're entertainers. Ben Shapiro's brilliant.
He's wicked smart.
I think he believes what he says. I think his methods are not completely. I think his methods have some things that could be worked on. Same with Steven Crowder.
Yeah,
Same with Candace Owens.
With that. The thing is, like, they can voice their message without going down the religious road.
Absolutely, and that's kind of my point.
Don't pull the religion into it.
Exactly. But so they're over here saying, Christian, religious, and all this, and then they're like cussing at people and calling them, names that are derogatory. I'm sorry, but that's not cool.
Not very Christian-like.
No. I'm not saying I don't swear, but I really don't swear at people, and I rarely swear in public space. Like, it's just you've heard,
Not very often.
Right.
I can't say the same for myself.
And I'm not saying that I'm not judging somebody for that. I'm not saying that and that they can't do it, but I'm saying you can't connect those two. And that's what they're doing is they're saying, we are Christian and we're good and all this stuff. And if you are a Christian, you're going to say, I'm not good. That's why I need Jesus, right? But they're saying that we're good and all these things, and then they're bringing in the clearly not good.
The bad mojo.
Right in the same sentence.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. That shows your heart. I mean, that's a proverb. So anyway, out of the, something about out of the mouth the heart speaks, or I don't know, I'm screwing it up really bad, but you get the idea.
I get the gist.
Yeah. And so I think they're both right. I think they're both wrong. I think they're both grifting. I think it's worked brilliantly for both sides. Both of them. I think that they would have been much more powerful for the culture war if they would have done something together, in a sense of. Well, let me put it
collaboration.
Collaboration. But let me put it like this. I've said this before. You'll probably remember. It's better, and I've said this from the beginning. I think probably the very first time, like 3 years ago, or 2.5 at least, when you were running for a local office. And I think we talked a little bit, at least off camera, about, hey, we got to be careful. Do you remember that? We have to be careful with a few things. We have to navigate it, but it's better that we say these 10 things and leave these 2 things over here, and people can research them or whatever, and not get pulled off the network altogether.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I agree with that. It's not that I'm saying go big tech. Thanks for censoring this.
Right.
But what I am saying is here's what we can do in this space. Now let's go work on this other space for those other 2 things.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of these podcasters are doing now that I watch on YouTube.
Yeah.
Is you can get our censored-ish version here, but if you want to hear our full opinions that they know that they cannot talk about on YouTube, come to this other place and we'll let it all hang out.
And that is a
It's
grift.
self-preservation.
It is self-preservation. I think that there's way too many people, though, that creators, they're called. Frankly, I create more things than what some of these creators create that are just, these digital creators and all these other things. All they're doing is repeating and remixing all these other things, like even literally from our podcast. You and I have both been on the same show, and people have spliced things together and all that kind of stuff, right? That's not creating anything. Right. That's not creating thought. That's not creating anything. All that is just, frankly, being a jerk in most cases. And I'm not saying one person specifically. So I think if you have commentary on something is very different. That's what we're doing is commentary on something. We're researching it. We're thinking about it. We're like, what's our opinion on it? All those things. That's creating a thought and creating something. But when all you're doing is, making these TikToks with Jordan Peterson next to you and like, that kind of
reaction
stuff.
To the actual.
I mean, come on. That's not doing anything.
Right. You're just getting your face next to somebody with some thought.
I can do that,
or a funny action or whatever.
Yeah. So
it'll be. I mean, I hope
that
that
will blow up at some point, someday. That can't. This digital space is new.
It's amazing.
I mean, this is only 15, 16 years old.
And what's happening now is, in my opinion, probably 3 or 4 years old. I think from my personal experience, the podcasts and the channels like this have really taken off in the last 2 or 3 years. But
for sure,
you've been watching and listening to podcasts a lot longer than I have.
Yeah, and so when I started doing podcasts 3.5 years ago, literally, there's millions more now.
Oh, yeah.
Millions.
How long has Joe Rogan been doing it? Like 11 or 12 years?
Yeah, I think he's like 13
Something
or 14
insane.
now. But since 3.5 years since I started, just in 3.5 years, there's millions more podcasts. Mm-hmm. Millions. Mm-hmm. Not one, but like 3 million more.
That's crazy.
Than when, yeah. Now, granted, most of them haven't lasted at all. I mean, even if they've lasted 10 episodes, it's work.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it doesn't really cost much, but it's work.
Well,
and it's time.
Value your time.
You know, so at any rate, so this space is new. Mm-hmm. These things are new. And doing what Steven Crowder is doing, unless there's a handshake behind closed doors, he just burned all bridges.
Oh, yeah. But he's getting mega exposure out of it.
Yes.
So that when he does start his own channel or whatever.
I sent you that, and I'm like, I'll support him. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of this other stuff started coming out. And, you know, when he created the website, and I'm not going to go into those details, people can go research it themselves. This was a planned coup from his quote-unquote friend group. Period.
It's great publicity.
It's
whatever the background was, it's unbelievable publicity.
Yeah.
Because they're all pulling from the same core or same group of people. And it's just who can get more, or will people have the ability to listen to all of them in different formats?
Right.
Like, I'm in 2 formats, and there's dozens of them out there. But
Tim Pool, we talked about him before we started. Mm-hmm. I support, and it's minimal. I know I do support his channel monetarily. It's minimal, but I also support some other things that are very influential in the public school arena, and in college. I literally send monthly support. Again, it's just my small contribution to keep some of these positive things going. So do I agree 100% with Tim Pool? No. But I do agree with 80% of what he's doing for the culture. And I'm a small piece to a big puzzle that will allow somebody that I can partially align with, because I don't have the means to do what he does, because he's been in this space for like 10, 11 years.
I think it'd be unhealthy for anybody to 100% back somebody else's thought process. Like, where's your opportunity for questioning anything?
Yeah.
Like, just blindly following somebody.
Yeah. And it ends up being the blind leading the blind.
Germany, 1940s kind of comes to mind. That
it really literally becomes that.
Like, you need to have some critical. No matter who you listen to or what you watch, you have to have some kind of critical thinking of. If it doesn't seem right, feel right, or smell right, it's probably not right.
Yeah. And, I could be like Ben Shapiro, and I got to talk really fast, and I can make a lot of sense and say big words and rip on MSN and, do these different things. But what does that accomplish?
Right.
They repeat themselves all the time.
Candace Owens does that a lot.
Yeah, and it's a tactic. I get it. I understand how it works. I've studied it.
Trump was the epitome of repeat.
Yeah, and so fine, whatever. But that does not actually help in the long run for society. The reality is, you're not going to get your way 100%, period. And so if you're then trying to build a brand and a business around that thought process, you are going to do whatever you can to do what? Make enemies so that your base grows. And that's just not real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't have to.
We have to do what Reagan and what was Tip
Gore?
Tip O'Neill?
That was before my time.
No, I even remember it, man. As a kid.
We're the same age.
A kid.
I don't know what you're talking about, though.
But they were famous. Gore. Now you got me.
Oh, gotcha. Tipper Gore.
But Reagan. Reagan and he would go round and round all day, and Reagan would make jokes about how they were the worst of enemies during the day, but then they would go have a beer at the end of the night and shake hands and say, let's go at it again tomorrow, and appreciate another perspective and negotiate and all these things. And that is the reality.
I think that's how politics used to work. I've got friends that have been in politics for a while, and you hash it out on the floor, but when you're done and you take your suit off, you go have a steak and a glass of wine or 4, and you're still friends, and you don't see that anymore. You don't see that. You don't have to look them in the eye anymore.
Right.
And I think that's really
I do think
communication.
That what McCarthy did with no more proxy voting, I think is really good.
Yeah. You want your $175,000 a year?
Yeah.
Get your ass in your seat.
Yep. Absolutely. So some of these things are really good, whether you like him or not. I'm not really a big McCarthy fan. I think he's a Republican in name only, also known as Rhino. And so I think that's part of it. I think there's, that's different topic.
Yeah,
different
we could have
day.
had a good show on that a couple weeks ago.
So
it'll be interesting to see what falls out with the podcast world and especially in DC in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Hey, getting Windows ready. Don't turn off your computer. But we're going to turn off the podcast. Thanks for watching, listening. Do appreciate it. Hammer the like button, hammer the share button, and we will look for your dollars in the bank soon. Wait, we don't do that.
No, we don't do that.
See you next time.